As much as I need a nap, what's really going on is I'm fantasizing about those fabulous lie-flat seats in first class on United Airlines. Let's give United a big round of applause. That's great. So our next session will feature not only Tom O'Toole from United Airlines, but also Jeffrey Katz, founding CEO of Orbitz, the company that has transformed the industry over the years, and my good friend and colleague, Mr. Dean DeBiase. Dean, take the stage.
Welcome to the travel section. I'm sitting in coach over here. How many of you travel once a month? Once a week? Twice a week? How many of you travel every day? It's crazy out there, isn't it? So these gentlemen really don't need big introductions. Their bios are in the book. And Rob, as usual, always shaves my time too close. So we're going to just jump right into it if it's all right. Sure. So starting with Tom. Most people know here United is a Fortune 100 company. Looking up the stats this morning, you're about $39 billion in revenue, 86,000 employees, 5,000 flights a day to about 350 airports. So 58 countries, give or take. You probably added one since last night. So that's, if I do my math right, that's about 2 million miles, and I'm sorry, about 2 million flights a year, about 135 million passengers. But that's impressive in itself. Last year's conference was about scale, and Tom, in some sense, invented scale, just so you guys know. But what they don't know about, when people think of major e-commerce brands, what do you guys think of? Major e-commerce brands. Apple, Amazon. Most people don't think of United Airlines, but his e-commerce group alone is in the double-digit billions. Seriously, I mean, that could be a Fortune company in itself. Is it true?
That is true. And to put a little specificity with it, if United.com, I mean, to be as specific as we can publicly here, if United.com were a freestanding retail enterprise, it is double-digit billions revenue production annually.
So you're a busy guy, is what that, and that, by the way, that is on your old site. Those of you that are still working on the old site, it's about to be released. Now you guys have, I've been part of your closed beta, which has been fascinating. Now you're in open beta. Anyone can actually go on the site and use it.
It is currently in open beta. Happy to provide that URL to anyone who would like.
It's a tough one. It's united.com/beta, I think it is, right?
I think
just a little name that has
I think we encrypted it. It's beta/united.com.
Oh, see, that's why I get lost all the time. I'm going to end up on anyway. Well, can you give us a little bit of your journey there? How has this journey gone to kind of relaunching one of the largest e-commerce sites in the world?
I would organize, it has been a journey, but really for three reasons. The new United.com, which is out in an open beta now, and you're welcome to visit it, and we welcome your comments. I mean, the beta really is intended to serve the function, not of QA in the technical sense, but of providing that real-world user feedback. So I do hope you visit it. Let us know what you think.
Bring your credit card.
Really, I would say the new United.com is intended to accomplish three things. One, most publicly visible, the other two, not yet. The first is, most fundamentally, as many of you, I'm sure, have observed, different United systems, like all legacy airlines, I think it's fair to say, are driven off of different back-end information systems. And that results in some of the anecdotal customer experiences that one hears about the gate agent had one information and the mobile app said another, and we know literally better than anyone why those circumstances occur. Underpinning the new United.com is a new common services layer that, for the first time since United.com was developed, rectifies that different customer contact interfaces being driven off of different systems. That's actually part of the new United.com. Second, there's quite a bit of functionality built in there for features that we'll introduce over the coming months and even years, as anyone who's done something like this, I'm sure, has done. We've actually built in a lot for things that we anticipate introducing over the next couple of years. And then third, the actual customer interface. Anyone who looks at it, I suspect, will immediately say this was designed for use on a handheld device, or particularly a tablet. It was. And it was designed mobile-centric and then worked back to the website itself.
You've trained most of us to do it with one thumb on our cell phone. It actually is one of the top apps out there. So you're moving all that to a massive website, and this is going to add another $1 billion of revenue someday, maybe?
It should. That's what we told the board.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It's always a good answer. Speaking of board meetings, Jeff, you've run a lot of things, not to mention Swiss Air. So you're like can I say old airline executive? Is that?
As you wish.
And there I go. So now I'm going to call you an independent guy, having kind of launched Orbitz. But there continues to be a flurry of startups in the kind of the let's just call it the travel space. So a lot of the OTA guys, the online travel agents, those are the people that don't answer the phone, for those of you in the crowd. But that's pretty much consolidated down to like Expedia and Priceline, really pretty much. And the airlines in this country, though we're represented from many countries around the world, have pretty much boiled down to the four big guys. You've got United, American, Southwest, and the other guys, Delta. So a first-year econ student sitting in the back row up there, yes, we see you, they basically say this doesn't bode well for competition. Consolidation on the OTA side, consolidation on the airlines. Is that a false assumption?
Well, in some ways, no. It may bode well for profitability and not so well for competition.
And that's important.
But yeah, industries mature, and then you see consolidation begin to happen. Back in the old days of the airline industry, a famous CEO named Bob Crandall said if God had meant man to fly, he would have made it profitable. And so consolidation happened over the last 30 years. To sort of make it more likely to be profitable. And the same thing is true in the online travel agency world. One of the things that most people don't know is that in the roughly 14 or 15 years that Orbitz has been around, it's been IPO'd twice and sold 3 times. So that's just an indicator that things are consolidating, and that's just what happens in sort of economic cycles like this.
So you're bullish about innovation in this?
I'm really bullish about innovation. I think we're on the cusp of seeing a lot of new things happen that are technology-led in travel, and
so it's not just because you live in Silicon Valley.
It is not. I mean, I think you're seeing a lot of industries being transformed around new organizing principle, and the new organizing principle of the moment's not new. Google started this way in roughly the year 2001. Travel is going to reorganize itself around information. And I think that's going to be a good thing, and we'll see a lot of innovation spurred by that.
So before we get to some of those stories, let me just dig a little deeper on this. So last week, Thursday, the Travel Technology Association, which is mostly the OTAs, your old company, and some other tech companies, they released a pretty detailed report saying that with airlines kind of withholding information from these OTAs, flight information, that it's going to kind of disintegrate some competition. Lack of transparency from the airlines was called out. Delta specifically has been called out in a couple articles in the journal as kind of being the whipping child at this point. So the findings were like pretty clear. It's like, hey, it's going to lead to higher prices, 11% increase, costing consumers $6 billion more, and what else did they say? Reduce competition, barriers to entry for smaller or new airlines. I didn't know there were too many new airlines, but is this true, or is this kind of a self-serving report? Because it was done by the OTA guys.
Yeah, look, it's whining, and I don't think that causality is likely. Just transparency is good and bad, but I don't think that's what's driving prices the way they had been heading. There will be a lot of competition. Travel has always been viciously competitive. I don't think that's stopping or stopped. And I think there's sort of an agenda that TTA pushes, just like I'm sure Delta Airlines has a data strategy, and we're seeing a piece of it, but not the whole of it.
Yeah, we'll get to big data in a minute, or as we sometimes call it, big data, small ideas. I was just looking at another quote here. When you were the CEO of Orbitz, one of your board members said, "Nothing spurs innovation like a small checkbook." So
right.
I agree with that, but so does competition, right?
Yes.
So you're still bullish that things are going to continue to kind of blossom and be innovative in the sector.
Yeah, if you're in the industry, it still feels viciously competitive, and I think we're going to see a lot more.
So let's just shift to the actual thing about flying, and then we'll move into digital. So when we were all younger, how many of you were told by your parents that there would be flying cars in the 21st century? Many of us were. Come on, baby boomers, put them up. 1960, they promised us we'd have flying cars, and as you guys have done, in 1999, I was on a Concorde trip from wherever, London to New York, kind of, looking out the window, chasing the sunset to New York to make a dinner meeting, and I leaned over to my seatmate and I said, now this is the future of travel. And I was wrong, obviously. Apparently it wasn't going to be the future of travel, but do you see any hope there with things like SpaceX and things like Musk's, the whole Elon Musk thing with the Hyperloop project? 600-mile-an-hour tube shooting down to L.A. You're obviously, you went to MIT, you're a smart guy, right? You fly. So just from a technical perspective, does some of the developments going on in the private sector give you hope that we may be back to supersonic someday?
Well, I think there, for example, there's a number of flying car companies out there right now, and those vehicles,
I would not buy one yet.
The vehicles work. I don't think we'll see flying cars and supersonic travel being meaningful ways to travel for most of the world who has some kind of a budget constraint. It's just way too expensive to push a wing through the air at supersonic speeds, and it is way too unsafe to have your typical flying car on the curb for most people. So I don't think we're going to see that, but I think all of that will spur technology breakthroughs that will lend themselves to some benefit to us. Let me give you one real example. The same guy who designed the plane that flew around the world nonstop, Burt Rutan, was the promoter of these little things we see now on virtually every airplane, the winglet, the things at the end of the winglet. That was developed by a guy who built model airplanes and ultimately flew an airplane around the world nonstop, and they made its way back to commercial travel, which is kind of everywhere and saves 3 to 5% in sort of fuel burn today everywhere. So that we'll see those kind of benefits. I don't think we'll be hopping out of our car Jetsons, out of our house Jetsons and hopping into our plane.
Yeah, and there's a whole eco-skies thing going on here. But I just have to tell you, going twice the speed of sound at 60,000 feet, there was just something remarkable about that. But is maybe, Tom, just back to reality, forget about the future. It's never what you want it to be. Is what Rob was doing, is that the future, just making it maybe it's slow, but it's just more comfortable? What do you think in terms of?
I think there's a development that's less hyperbolic, but perhaps has been not as evident that is having real positive implications now, and that is the introduction of the 787. The 787, and yes, there were battery issues at the outset of it. The 787 is an outstanding aircraft that has real technological innovation in it. We were the launch customer in the United States. We fly a growing number of them around the world, and what hasn't, I don't think, been fully observed or appreciated about the 787 is it is enabling airlines, us among them, to fly routes that would otherwise not be served. And the 787, the economics of the 787, not to mention the fuel efficiency of it, but the economics of the 787 really change the network opportunities for an airline, which in practical consumer benefit means the routes that are served. I'll give you two examples.
Okay.
We fly San Francisco to Chengdu, China, which is only the first of interior China destinations that I expect we will serve. We would not fly, here's a directive, we would not fly right now San Francisco to Chengdu, China, were it not for the 787. Los Angeles, Melbourne. We currently fly Los Angeles, Melbourne on a 787. The economics there, one could argue, might not go the way they do. They would be radically different were it not for the 787. So my point is, and this isn't, as I say, not nearly as rhetorically exciting as flying cars. However, the 787 was designed to serve what in airline parlance are called long, thin routes. And so take San Francisco to Chengdu, China, long, thin routes. It's really changing the economics of what routes will be served. That's a technological impact that's happening today, and the economics of that plane really are striking.
Otherwise you'd never put a 747 on a route like that, not enough people going probably. Let's switch to the realities of today's industry. Most people anticipate the thought of going to the airport, getting on a trip, kind of like they do going to their favorite dentist. It's just a thing that they go through. It's somewhat traumatic in some cases. So can we talk about the in-flight experience? You've been a trailblazer, quite frankly, since you left Hyatt, came to United, been working on, how do you make the in-flight experience better? So we're really curious how you looked at that digital landscape and decided on what you decided on in terms of the new platforms and the planes now.
Sure. Overall comment on the in-flight experience, airline margins, us among them, have, knock on wood, we believe sustainably increased, and you're seeing reinvestment of some of that profitability in the product. And so if you take, and then I'll move on to the heart of your question about digital, but just in terms of reinvesting in the product, be it something as mundane but practical as food or retrofitting entire cabins of aircraft, you're seeing that reinvestment, and that is a function of the stronger economics of the industry as a whole. I was on a plane the other day, and I happened to notice as I was getting on the plane, it was an Airbus, and I happened to notice as I was getting on the plane, well, this plane's been around a while. This is a aircraft that's got a lot of miles on it. However, it had, just by luck of the draw coincidence, all of our current product enhancements. And as I was getting off, one guy who I'm sure fancies himself a travel aficionado said to his companion, he said, you know, this is a new plane. The guy says, really? He says, yeah, I know what I'm talking about.
It's got that digital, it's got that digital smell to
he
it.
says, but yeah, I've followed these things. This is a brand new plane. And I thought to myself, you don't have a clue what you're talking about, but I'm glad you think that. And the point is that you're seeing product investments, and you're going to see a lot more of that in a lot more new aircraft. Now, to get to the heart of your question, we took a very different path from our competitors, quite intentionally, in terms of onboard digital channels. And this is a contributing factor to why we had a rocky technical introduction for about 18 months. Because we took the approach that we buy, and it comes out of my budget. For those of you in a corporate world, you can relate, it comes out of my budget. We buy bandwidth to the top of the plane. What we do with that bandwidth inside the plane and what we do with the content on the server inside the plane is entirely within our control. And we believed, and that is a very different approach than some, perhaps arguably most of our competitors have taken. But we did that because we believe that both in terms of the business models that enables and the customer services that enables economically, ultimately that's where we'd want to end up, which is in fact the way it's playing out after a rough couple of years of being sure that it was technically reliable. So what that means is that if we have a product out there now, it was introduced as personal device entertainment, we're rebranding it now as United Private Screening, which is the free content streaming on the planes. I will tell you, without getting into specific metrics, aircraft fleets that have personal device entertainment have double-digit increases. This is literally a true statement without giving double-digit increases in customer satisfaction. There are very, very few things that produce a double-digit increase in customer satisfaction on planes. Personal device entertainment has been extremely well received.
Alcohol sometimes.
Has been extremely well received. So we've, you know, and I'll just conclude by saying that we think people want to get their content on planes the same way they want to get their content in every other aspect of their life, which is on their own personal device.
And that was the huge bet that you made. I'm holding up his phone. Was 2 or 3 years ago. You guys took the unpopular board-level decision of, you know, all that hardware we just invested in the plane, we're going to shit can it, write it all off. We're not going to keep upgrading these systems. You can never stay up with it. We're going to stream to people's device. And it hurt them for at least, I don't know, 2 years?
Well, getting it technically reliable. We have, this is more than
but the
anybody ever
switchover,
cared
you
to
get
know.
on planes, there'd be nothing there. It was a very gutsy move for a public company. But you're coming out of that with, I think, the leader in terms of streaming entertainment. Anyway, just for some of our international flyers that hadn't been on your planes, I just thought I'd let them know exactly what you did. I thought it was impressive. So I called you a trailblazer. You just partnered with Kellogg. You were a participant in the class that Paul and I teach here. We did. Where our students, that's right, you slept in the back, I noticed, in the classroom. But so our students worked on Innovation Pipeline for Tom and his digital team. And Hyatt is actually going through it now with us, which you used to be the CMO of. And McDonald's is actually executing on a few of the items that the students came up with, the actual plans. So besides Kellogg, where do you get your inspiration? Where do these ideas come from? Tell me it's not all in the Willis Tower down on the old Sears Tower. How do you kind of find out what is the next thing to build?
I think we as a company and myself personally try to stay very engaged with a very wide range of entrepreneurs, people with ideas, people like Jeff, frankly, to be totally honest about it, who've had a very successful track record in the travel industry and are now out doing independent things to change the industry. So I'll have a cup of coffee with anybody and try to stay very active with people at 1871, for those of you here in Chicago, and the like, and have a lot of conversations with people who are innovating out there.
And now you have the kin to pull from.
And now we have the kin.
And it was very serendipitous to have Jeff fly in, who's going to be leaving us tonight. Jeff, from an outsider point of view, having run airlines and now you can kind of be a critic, what do you think what is the product experience that airlines really should be zeroing in on in the next few years?
Well, it's one of the things you didn't talk about is I had the ignominious responsibility to run customer service at American Airlines also for a few years. So it's a pretty humbling thing to sit next to somebody on a plane and say, I'm in charge of the food. Try that sometime. That's humbling. Look, I think it's a very tough puzzle to take that footprint. We all know that aluminum tube and more importantly, the whole airport apparatus, which you really don't control either, and create great customer experiences. There's some examples for premium or private flyers. I think information is going to be a big part of it, as Tom mentioned. That's creating a better entertainment opportunity. Information can lead to sort of at least letting us choose what we want to eat and drink in advance, and maybe when we get off the plane as well. Wouldn't it be great to be on the plane and say I'm going to be late to my hotel room and pre-order and pre-select what's in my room when I get there as another alternative? You know, these things, these ideas probably can happen to us. So information will be a big motivator. I think what the airlines are doing to more segment the ground and the in-flight experience in terms of where I sit, what I experience in the plane, what I experience on the ground, where am I in the queue, all those things will help. And if the airline industry can be profitable, then I think, we can see more of the things Tom described come to fruition in terms of a little more investment coming back into us, the traveler.
So if I compare like a McDonald's to a United, McDonald's doesn't know much about their customers because it used to be a big cash business. He knows everything about me. Everything, more than any trusted brand relationship I know. Do you think the industry is really tapping into the big data opportunity there yet?
Well, I'm going to say I think they're beginning.
I know what he's going to say.
There is some of it happening, but I think we're at an infancy. And honestly, having run an airline and so forth, when you're fighting for survival, it's very hard to think about really doing a great job for customers every day. And a lot of the past decades have been about survival. I remember after 9/11, one of the senior guys at happened to be Northwest Airlines calls me up and said, we're drowning closer to the surface. And a lot of days...
There's a good slogan.
A lot of days in the airline industry, that's what it feels like. So I don't think they're paying enough attention to creating differentiated and sustainable customer experiences. But I know most, if not all, the people running these companies, and I think they mean to get there, and they're taking steps in that direction. But I think it would be crazy for any of us to say we're satisfied with our experience. Once in a while we are.
Maybe that's a good segue.
We all lust for more.
To your other job, Tom, you're also the president of Mileage Plus. Yet again, another potential Fortune, whatever, 1,000 company. Massive company in itself. So what does the future of loyalty look like? What are you doing to attract millennials? What's going on here? You guys invented this category, really, this frequent flyer category that I always think about, gee, if people weren't earning points, I don't know if business travelers would travel that much anymore. It's like you've created this interesting ecosystem.
Well, actually, I think Jeff's former boss, we mentioned, invented the loyalty programs down at American in 1981, if I remember right, and United introduced ours about 6 months later, and the rest is history. In terms of future loyalty programs, what you're seeing right now, and certainly we were very intentional about this, is a multi-year rationalization of some of the unintended economics that developed in loyalty programs as a result of having the unit of value be based on mileage, which if you go back to 1981, and given that it's a transportation business, certainly was intuitively a very logical thing to do. Having value being awarded based on miles flown, if you fast forward 30-some years, created some very upside down and unintended economic consequences with these programs. And that's what the industry, certainly the airline industry, certainly our company, has been in the process of rectifying and sorting out so as to align our investment in the customer with customer value over the last couple of years. That's the underpinning to a whole series of program changes in these loyalty programs that have occurred, the most recent and most visible shift being the shift to more of a revenue basis for awarding still what are nominally called miles.
Smart move.
I think what the future, so you asked what's happening in loyalty programs, that's at the most fundamental level, what's happening with loyalty programs, at least in the airline industry. In terms of going forward, our main focus is on increasing the utility, both in earning and redemption, in the consumer earn and burn, as they say, increasing the utility of our miles, both for earning and redemption, major strategic priority. Rapidly moving to point of sale earning, point of sale redemption at a wide network of retail outlets. And we have a product out there right now called Mileage Plus X, which really is our first foray into point of sale earning, point of sale redemption at a very wide range of retailers. That gives you, Mileage Plus X gives you an indication where we're headed with Mileage Plus.
Yep.
The other thing you touched on millennials. Our focus really is on the subset of millennials that corresponds to our target audience overall. Yes, we would like everyone to fly United Airlines. If you look who is really the heart of our target audience, it is the people in this room. It is upscale business travelers, upscale high yield business travelers. That's the heart of our target audience. We are interested in the millennial. You asked about millennials. Now that segment within millennials, who is that? The 26-year-old consultant for Accenture who's on a plane 4 days a week. That's our target within the millennials.
Go Accenture. So, some of these millennials, do they even care about this stuff, Jeff? I mean, if they're looking for cheap, they're going Southwest. If they're looking for experience, they're going for Virgin. They're not really thinking all the perks and the sharing economy kind of profile.
The training in perquisites, especially among the demographic Tom just described, comes at a very young age.
Yep.
They're, as we know, right, technology very savvy, they're very discriminating.
They want
to. So I think they care a lot, and I think they're more expert at knowing how to get it and find it, or when they don't need it.
They want to book it on Uber is what they want. Is there a service coming like that?
Where they can, there actually is.
Not like a current OTA
no,
price
absolutely.
line.
Look, there's a startup actually in work where you can book through traditional booking channels like an Expedia, or Sabre is a travel agency system. You can book excess seats on private aircraft.
Yeah. I've seen it for private, just not commercial yet.
And so, I don't personally think it's going to work.
Don't tell that to the startup guys in the back row here.
The problem with private flying is, a lot of you fly private, at least on occasion. It's a super expensive way to travel. You can't make something super expensive cheap. On occasion, you can use sharing to make it less ridiculous, but you can't make it cheap.
Take the pain out of it. All right, final round. We got 1 minute. Quick question. So, Tom, you and I visited a lot of incubators, accelerators, the Dancing with Startups program that I'm working on. What is it, when startups come and visit with you, what should they know about before they take the meeting with you that they should be aware of?
The observation I would share, just to increase the chances of a successful engagement, are to the extent possible, and I think someone doesn't need to be familiar with the arcane workings of the airline industry to do this, to anticipate the questions that we need to ask. And I will illustrate it with an example. We met yesterday, this is a real world example within the last 24 hours. We met yesterday with a guy who has an idea for a startup, classic tech entrepreneur, idea for a startup. I won't go into the details out of respect for our
We've all
non-disclosure,
signed the NDA.
out of respect for our NDA. I won't go into the details, but the point is, we actually, those of us sitting on our side of the table, think that this could be the person who makes this idea work that others have tried and failed, but this guy might actually have it figured out. Here's the point. We necessarily I'm talking about the people from United sitting in a room, we were asking a whole variety of questions about things that we need to be concerned about. How will this interface with our systems? How will this impact our relationship with airports? How will this be represented in terms of its relationship to United Airlines? What legal implications might there be if we tie it in with our loyalty program? And I could just read the look on the person's face of, why are you making this so difficult? Well, the answer is because we need to. We are a large, complex public company that does business at a lot of airports.
Scale is a tough thing.
And so I think, and that observation I suggest would be helpful to a number of people who want to come in and present ideas to us. The types of questions don't require any inside understanding of the airline industry, simply to say, what types of questions are they going to need to deal with? That'd be my 2 cents worth.
So flip it to Jeff, there's no shortage of startups in mulling around the space. So even at 1871, we've got Rocket Miles, we've got, which is now part of Priceline, of course, but Options Away, we kind of lock in fares. So, no shortage of ideas coming around. What does the airline industry need to do a better job at tapping into the entrepreneurial movement to kind of accelerate or help their innovation?
Well, I think, airline industry, I know to be very open to innovate. They've been big risk takers. If you look at all these programs we just talked about, the history is rife with firsts for marketplaces. Loyalty programs is one good example. So I think, but however, there needs to be a channel in. It needs to be a channel that has clout at the top and has a certain permission to take risks. And Tom pointed out that it's not easy for a company, but they've done it in the past, and they need to have sort of more formalized, what I call processes for letting risk come into the organization so that they can be more open to some of the good ideas that are out there. We'll see. How it happens.
The future of travel. Well, thank you guys for opening up and sharing some of your insights. We've decided to keep on schedule. Q&A is going to be individually with the guys afterwards. And Rob, you want to kind of come up and lie down on the couch again? And we can kind
I'd
of...
love to lie down, but Jeff and Tom are already sitting there. That would be very awkward. As much as I love you both very much, Jeff, thank you so much. It was great. Tom, thank you for being here.
Hold on a sec.
Dean.